Ruth slammed her fist into Solomon's chest. Once, twice, 3 times. The 6-year-old boy lay blue-lipped on the frozen church floor, not breathing, not moving, while 5 other children watched from the shadows. She hit him again. "Breathe! Breathe, damn you!" Outside, lanterns swung past the window. The whole town of Silver Creek walking by. Not one stopped. Not one knocked. Ruth screamed for help until her throat tore. Nothing. Just footsteps fading into the storm. But on the ridge above town, a stranger with nothing left to lose heard that scream and started running. If you want to see 6 forgotten children fight back against a town that wanted them dead, subscribe now and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Ruth hit him again. Her frozen fist connected with Solomon's small chest. The sound was wrong, hollow, like hitting a sack of grain instead of a living boy. "Breathe," her voice cracked. "Sol, you breathe right now." Nothing. His lips stayed blue. His eyes stayed closed. Behind her, Pearl started wailing. The 4-year-old's cries echoed off the church walls, high and thin and terrified. Her twin sister Opal pressed both hands over her ears, rocking back and forth. "Make her stop!" Ruth didn't turn around. "Nettie, make her stop!" "I'm trying." 8-year-old Nettie pulled Pearl close, muffling the screams against her shoulder. "Ruth, he ain't dead." Ruth hit Solomon's chest again. "He ain't allowed to be dead." She bent down, pressed her ear to his ribs, listened. Nothing. No. No, no, no. She tilted his head back the way she'd seen a doctor do once, pinched his nose, and blew into his mouth. His chest rose, fell. She did it again, and again. "Come on, Sol." Her lips were cracked and bleeding. "Come on, you little—" Solomon coughed. Water sprayed from his mouth, then bile. Then he was gasping and crying and alive. Ruth grabbed him, crushed him against her chest, and didn't let go. "You're okay." Her whole body was shaking. "You're okay now. I got you. Ruth." Nettie's voice was strange. "Ruth, someone's coming." Ruth's head snapped up. Through the cracked window, she saw it. A shape moving through the snow. Big. Fast. Coming straight toward the church. She laid Solomon down gently and grabbed the knife from her boot. "Everyone get behind me. Now!" The door exploded inward. Ruth lunged. Her blade caught firelight as she drove it toward the figure's throat. A hand caught her wrist, twisted. The knife clattered to the floor. "Easy." The voice was low, rough. "I ain't here to hurt you." Ruth kicked. Her boot connected with his shin. He grunted, but didn't let go. "Let me go!" She thrashed like a wild animal. "Let me go, or I'll scream!" "You already screamed. That's how I found you." The grip on her wrist loosened. "I heard you from the ridge. Thought someone was dying." Someone was. Ruth yanked her arm free, scrambling backward. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness. The man was tall, broad shoulders, dark beard with frost in it. A scar ran from his left eye to his cheekbone, and his eyes looked like they'd stopped feeling anything a long time ago. "Who are you?" Ruth demanded. Nobody important. His gaze moved past her to the children huddled in the shadows. Then to Solomon, still gasping on the floor. "That boy need a doctor?" "What's it to you?" The man didn't answer. He crossed the church in 3 strides and dropped to his knees beside Solomon. His hands were surprisingly gentle as he touched the boy's forehead, his neck, his chest. "Fever's burning him up." "How long?" Ruth hesitated. How long, girl? I ain't asking twice.
3 days. Maybe 4.
He eat anything?
We ain't had food since...
Ruth's voice faltered.
I don't remember.
The man's jaw tightened. He looked at her, really looked, taking in her hollow cheeks and cracked lips, and the desperate fury in her eyes. How many of you?
6.
How old's the youngest?
4. The twins.
His eyes closed, just for a second. When they opened, something had changed, something Ruth couldn't name. There's a farm 2 miles north. Woman lives there alone. Only chimney smoking in the whole valley. She won't help us. Ruth's voice went flat. Nobody helps Pemberton's orphans. The man went still. Pemberton. He said the name like it tasted rotten. Judge Pemberton? You know him?
I know his kind.
The man lifted Solomon carefully, cradling him like something precious. That's enough. Ruth watched him stand. Every instinct screamed danger. Strangers took things. Strangers hurt. Strangers left you bleeding in alleyways at midnight. But Solomon was dying, and the town had walked past for 3 days without stopping. What's your name? She demanded.
Jesse. Jesse what? Just Jesse.
He headed for the door. You coming or you staying? Ruth looked at the children, at Nettie holding the twins, at 10-year-old Toby silent in the corner, his green eyes watching everything, at Solomon barely breathing in the stranger's arms. She picked up her knife. You try anything, I'll kill you in your sleep. Wouldn't expect less. Jesse stepped into the storm. Stay close. Don't fall behind. They walked. Ruth had never known cold like this. It bit through her thin coat, her worn boots, her skin and bones and soul. Every breath burned. Every step was a battle. The twins couldn't keep up. Ruth carried Pearl. Nettie carried Opal. Toby walked in silence, his small body bent against the wind. Jesse never slowed. He moved through the snow like something born to it. Solomon pressed against his chest, his long legs eating up the distance.
Mister!
Nettie's voice was barely audible over the wind.
Mister! I can't feel my feet.
Jesse stopped, turned. His eyes found Nettie's purple lips, her shaking body. Without a word, he shifted Solomon to one arm and picked up Nettie with the other. Ruth stared. Keep moving. His voice was gruff. We stop, we die. They kept moving. The farmhouse appeared like a ghost through the white. Ruth saw the chimney first, smoke rising thin and gray. Then the house. Then the barn. Then the fence that hadn't been mended in years. Jesse stopped at the gate. Stay behind me. Whatever happens, don't run. He walked up the path, climbed the porch steps, raised his fist to knock. The door flew open. A woman stood there, thin, brown hair escaping from a braid, eyes like storm clouds, and a shotgun pointed directly at Jesse's chest. One more step and I pull this trigger. Her hands weren't shaking. Her voice wasn't shaking. Nothing about her was shaking. Jesse didn't move. Ma'am, I got a dying boy here, 6 years old. Needs warmth and medicine or he won't see morning.
Take him to town.
Town won't help. Why not? Because he's one of Judge Pemberton's orphans. The woman's face changed. Ruth saw it happen. Something flickered behind those storm cloud eyes. Fear, anger, and something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. How many? The woman asked. 6 children. Jesse's voice was steady. And me. The woman's grip on the shotgun tightened. Her eyes moved past Jessie to Ruth, standing in the snow with Pearl in her arms. To the other children huddled behind her. To the small bodies shaking with cold and fear and desperate hope. The shotgun lowered. "Get inside, before you freeze." The farmhouse was warm. Ruth stood in the doorway, unable to move. Heat wrapped around her like arms, like an embrace, like something she'd forgotten existed. "Don't just stand there," the woman's voice was sharp. "Close the door. You're letting in the cold." Ruth closed the door. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely work the latch. The woman moved fast. She cleared the table, pulled blankets from a chest, barked orders like a general commanding troops. "You, Jessie, put the boy by the fire, not too close. I need the medicine chest from the bedroom, brown leather, top shelf." She looked at Ruth. "You, start rubbing his hands and feet. Slow, gentle. We warm him too fast, his heart might stop." Ruth knelt beside Solomon. His skin was cold as marble. She took his small hand in hers and started rubbing. The woman worked without stopping. She stripped Solomon's wet clothes, wrapped him in blankets, pressed a cloth soaked in something sharp-smelling to his forehead. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. "You've done this before," Ruth said. "I was a nurse." The woman didn't look up. "Before." "Before what?" "Before my husband died." The words hung in the air. Ruth felt them land, heavy and cold. Jessie returned with the medicine chest. The woman opened it, mixed things Ruth didn't recognize, forced liquid between Solomon's blue lips. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, Solomon coughed, stirred. His eyes fluttered. "There you are." The woman's voice softened. "There you are, little one. You stay with us now. You hear me? You stay." Solomon's hand found the woman's wrist. His grip was weak, but his eyes were open. "Angel," he whispered. The woman went still. "What did you say?" "Angel." Solomon's voice was thread-thin. I saw a lady. She said—" She swallowed. "She said someone's waiting. But he can wait longer." The woman's face drained of color. Her hands started shaking. Ruth watched, confused. "What's wrong? What did he say?" "Nothing." The woman stood abruptly. "He's delirious. Fever dreams." She walked to the window, her back to the room. "He needs rest. You all do." Ruth wanted to ask more, but the woman's shoulders were rigid, her hands clenched at her sides. Whatever Solomon had said, it meant something. Something painful. Jessie caught Ruth's eye, shook his head slightly. "Not now." Ruth understood. Some questions could wait. The night stretched long. The children fell asleep in a pile near the fire. The twins tangled together, Nettie with her arm around Solomon, Toby curled in the corner, his notebook clutched to his chest. Ruth couldn't sleep. She sat watching Solomon breathe, counting each rise and fall of his chest. The woman, Clara, she'd finally said, sat at the table, staring at nothing, lost somewhere Ruth couldn't follow. Jessie was by the door. His eyes were closed, but his hand rested on his gun. Not sleeping, waiting. "You should rest." Clara's voice startled Ruth. She hadn't realized the woman was watching her. "Can't," Ruth said. "Why not?" "Because if I sleep, something bad happens. It always does." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she rose and crossed the room, sat down beside Ruth, close but not touching. "How long have you been taking care of them?" 2 years, since the orphanage. Since before, really." "Where's your mother?" "Dead." "Father?" "Never had one." Ruth's voice was flat. "Mama said he was a gambler. Said he loved cards more than he loved us." Clara didn't offer pity. Didn't say she was sorry. Ruth was grateful for that. She told me something once, Ruth continued. Said the only person you can count on is yourself. Said everyone else will let you down. That's a hard way to live. It's the only way that works. Clara reached out. Her hand found Ruth's, wrapping around the girl's frozen fingers. Ruth flinched. Touch meant danger. Touch meant someone wanting something. But Clara's hand was warm, and she wasn't asking for anything, just giving. You don't have to carry them alone, Clara said quietly. Not anymore. Ruth's eyes burned. She blinked hard. I don't know any other way. Then we'll figure it out together. Ruth looked at this woman, this stranger who'd taken them in, who'd saved Solomon, who was holding her hand like it mattered. Why? Ruth's voice cracked. Why are you helping us? We're nothing to you. Clara was silent for a long moment. Because 2 years ago, I was alone in a storm, and nobody came. Her voice roughened. My husband was dead. My neighbors turned their backs. The whole town pretended I didn't exist. I know what it feels like to be abandoned. What happened to your husband? Clara's hand tightened on Ruth's. He asked the wrong questions about the wrong people, and then he had an accident. The word hung between them. Accident. Ruth had heard it before. The Pemberton word. The word that meant murder, dressed up in Sunday clothes. Judge Pemberton, Ruth said. Clara's breath caught. You know something. Her voice sharpened. What do you know? Ruth looked at Toby in the corner, the silent boy with the green eyes who saw everything and forgot nothing. Toby, she said quietly, show her. Toby didn't speak. He never spoke, but he opened his notebook and held it up. Clara leaned forward. Her face went white. The drawing showed a man, well-dressed, silver hair, expensive coat. A face that smiled even when the eyes didn't. Ruth had seen that face in her nightmares every night since they'd run. You know him, Ruth said. Clara's voice came out strangled. That's the last man my husband met with, the day before he died. The room went silent. Even the fire seemed to stop crackling. Your husband came to the orphanage. Ruth spoke slowly, carefully. Month before he died, asking questions about children, about where they were being sent. The judge was real nice to him, real friendly. And then he had an accident. Clara made a sound, half sob, half something darker. Jesse moved. He crossed the room in 3 strides and took the notebook from Toby's hands, studied the drawing. I know this man, he said quietly. Clara looked at him. How? Jesse's jaw worked. He was silent for a long moment. I've been hunting someone. 4 years now. A man who... His voice caught. A man who took everything from me. Ruth watched his face, saw the pain there, the rage, the grief. She understood those things. She carried them too. What did he take? Clara asked. Jesse didn't answer, but his eyes moved to Solomon sleeping by the fire, to the twins tangled together, to Nettie with her protective arm. Everything, he said finally. He took everything. The silence stretched. Then Clara spoke. There's a ledger. Ruth mentioned it earlier. A ledger in Pemberton's desk. She looked at Ruth. You said you saw it. What's in it? Ruth took a breath. Names, she said. Dates, numbers. Every child that's come through his orphanage for 10 years. Where they came from, where they went, how much they sold for. Sold? To the mines, to the railroad, to anyone who'd pay. Ruth's voice hardened. We ain't orphans to him, ma'am. We're livestock. He's been selling children for years, hundreds of them, maybe more. Clara's hands curled into fists. And my husband found out. Your husband was close, real close. Ruth looked at Toby's drawing, close enough that Pemberton had to stop him. The pieces connected. Ruth watched Clara's face as understanding dawned. Horror, rage, and underneath it all, the cold certainty of truth. He killed Thomas, Clara whispered. The judge murdered my husband. Yes, ma'am. Ruth's voice was steady. He did. Clara stood. Her whole body was shaking now, but not with fear, with fury. She walked to the window, stood there for a long moment, staring out at the snow. When she turned back, her eyes were different, harder, clearer. That ledger, she said. Where is it? Locked in his desk, in his office at the courthouse. Can you get to it? Ruth hesitated. It's guarded, always. And even if we could get in, he'd know. He'd come for us. He's already coming, Jessie said quietly. Ruth turned. What? Jessie was looking out the window. His face had gone still. I went through town before I found you. Asked about shelter, about the storm. People noticed. People talked. So a man like Pemberton has eyes everywhere. He knows a stranger came through. He knows 6 of his orphans are missing. And by morning, Jessie's jaw tightened. By morning, he'll know exactly where we are. Ruth felt the blood drain from her face. We have to run. Run where? Clara's voice was sharp. The storm's not done. The passes are blocked. There's nowhere to go. Then what do we do? Jessie turned from the window. His eyes found Ruth's, then Clara's. We don't run, he said. We fight. Fight? Ruth's voice cracked. Fight the judge? He owns this whole territory. He's got men, money, connections. He's... One man, Jessie cut her off. One man who's gotten away with murder because nobody stood up to him. One man who's built his whole empire on fear and silence. He's more than that. No, he ain't. Jessie's voice hardened. I've hunted men like Pemberton for 20 years. They look powerful because people let them look powerful. But underneath, he shook his head. Underneath, they're cowards. Every single one. Clara stepped forward. What are you saying? I'm saying we don't run. I'm saying we get that ledger. I'm saying we show every newspaper, every federal marshal, every honest person in this territory what Pemberton really is. And if we fail, then we die fighting instead of running. Jessie's eyes never wavered, but at least we die standing up. Ruth looked at him. This stranger who'd pulled her from a frozen church, who'd carried Solomon through the snow, who was offering to fight for children he'd known for less than a day. Why? She demanded. Why do you care? We're nothing to you. Jessie was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because I had children once. Because I wasn't there when they needed me. Because I've spent 4 years running from that failure, and I'm tired of running. He looked at Solomon, at the twins, at Nettie and Toby. Because every child deserves someone willing to fight for them. And right now, he met Ruth's eyes. Right now, that someone is me. Ruth stared at him. She'd trusted people before. It had always ended badly. But Solomon was alive because of this man. They were warm because of Clara. And somewhere outside, a monster was coming for them whether they fought or not. She looked at Toby. The silent boy nodded once. She looked at Clara. The woman's jaw was set. She looked at Jessie and saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Something almost like hope. "Fine," Ruth said. "We fight." Jessie almost smiled. "Good. Then we need a plan." Dawn came gray and cold. Ruth stood at the window watching the sky lighten. Behind her, the children slept. Clara was preparing food. Jessie was checking his weapons. They'd talked through the night, made plans, assigned roles. It wasn't much, a half-formed strategy built on hope and desperation. But it was something. Jessie came to stand beside her. "You should sleep," he said. "Can't." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "You're a good leader, Ruth. Those children are alive because of you. They're alive because I was too stubborn to let them die." "Same thing." Jessie's voice softened. "My daughter was stubborn like you. Never backed down from anything. Drove me crazy." Ruth looked at him. His daughter? Jessie's face flickered. Just for a moment, pain broke through. Her name was Sarah. She was 10. What happened to her? The same thing that happened to all of them. The thing I wasn't there to stop. He didn't say more. Ruth didn't ask. Some wounds weren't meant to be opened. "Riders!" Clara's voice cut through the silence. "On the ridge!" Ruth's blood went cold. She ran to the other window, looked out. 5 men on horseback, coming fast. And at the front, silver hair catching the morning light, rode Judge Malcolm Pemberton. "He's here," Ruth breathed. Jessie was already moving. He grabbed his rifle, checked the chamber. "Clara, get the children to the root cellar. Ruth, help her." "What about you? I'll buy you time." "Buy us time? There's 5 of them and 1 of you. I faced worse odds." Jessie's eyes found hers. "Get those children somewhere safe. That's what matters." Ruth wanted to argue, wanted to fight beside him. But the twins were crying, and Solomon could barely walk, and someone had to protect them. "Don't you dare die," she said fiercely. "Wasn't planning on it." Jessie almost smiled. "Now go." Ruth ran. She gathered the children, herded them toward the back of the house. Clara was already lifting the cellar door, ushering them down into the darkness. "What's happening?" Nettie's voice trembled. "Ruth, what's happening?" "Bad men are here." Ruth kept her voice steady. "We're going to hide until they're gone." "What about the man?" Pearl whimpered. "The nice man who carried Solomon." "He's going to be fine." Ruth prayed she wasn't lying. "Now get down there and don't make a sound." She helped them into the cellar. Toby first, then the twins, then Nettie carrying Solomon. Clara went last. Ruth hesitated at the door. "You too." Clara's voice was sharp. "I can help him." "You can help by staying alive." Clara grabbed her arm. "Those children need you, Ruth. Don't you dare throw that away." Ruth looked back toward the front of the house. She could hear hoofbeats now. Close. Getting closer. She climbed into the cellar. Clara pulled the door shut above them. Darkness. Silence. And the sound of Ruth's heart pounding like a war drum. They waited. Above them, the front door crashed open. Voices. Loud. Demanding. "Where are they, Mrs. Thornton?" Pemberton's voice, smooth as oil. "I know they're here. Make this easy on yourself." Clara's voice, muffled but defiant. "I don't know what you're talking about." A crash. Something breaking. Ruth's hand found her knife. Her knuckles went white around the handle. "I'll ask once more," Pemberton's voice had lost its smoothness. "Where are the children?"
Safe.
Jesse's voice now. "Far from here." Silence. Then Pemberton laughed. "Mr. Jesse Carter, I wondered when we'd meet. You've been asking questions in 3 territories, following trails that should have gone cold years ago." Ruth's heart stopped. Jesse Carter. The name meant something. She could hear it in Pemberton's voice. "You know who I am?" Jesse said. "I know what you're looking for." Pemberton's voice dripped with amusement. "A man named Ezekiel Holt. The man you think burned your family." Ruth heard Jesse's breath catch. "Think? Oh, Mr. Carter, you've been chasing the wrong ghost. Holt didn't kill your wife and children. He was just convenient." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Holt worked for me, did what I told him when I told him. And when he became a liability—" Pemberton paused. "Well, let's just say you'll never find his body." Ruth pressed her hand over her mouth. Beside her, Clara had gone rigid. "So all this time—" Jesse's voice was strangled. "All this time I was hunting your dog, while the real monster sat in a courthouse." "Monster?" Pemberton laughed. "I'm a businessman, Mr. Carter. Your family was collateral damage. Nothing personal." Ruth heard it then, the sound of a gun cocking. "You killed my wife." Jesse's voice had changed, gone cold, gone dead. "You killed my children." "I removed obstacles. There's a difference." Jesse fired. The sound was deafening even through the cellar floor. Then chaos, shouting, more shots, bodies hitting wood. Ruth grabbed Nettie. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." Above them the fight raged. Ruth counted shots. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then silence. A long, terrible silence. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The cellar door creaked. Ruth raised her knife. Light poured in. A figure stood above them, silhouetted against the gray morning sky. Ruth's heart stopped. Then the figure spoke. "It's over." "Jesse." He reached down, helped them out one by one. His face was bloody. His arm hung at a wrong angle. But he was alive. Ruth looked past him into the farmhouse. 4 bodies on the floor. Pemberton's men. And in the corner, slumped against the wall, Judge Malcolm Pemberton himself. A dark stain spreading across his expensive coat. His pale eyes staring at nothing. "Is he dead?" Ruth whispered. "Not yet." Jesse's voice was flat, but close. Ruth walked toward the dying man. Pemberton's eyes found her. Even now, even bleeding out on the stranger's floor, he managed to smile. "Little Ruth," his voice bubbled. "The one who got away." Ruth knelt beside him. "The ledger," she said. "Where is it?" Pemberton laughed. Blood flecked his lips. "Burn," he coughed. "Told them to burn everything if I didn't come back." Ruth felt her heart drop. No, she'd been so close to proving everything, to freeing every child still trapped in that hellhole. But Pemberton was still talking. "Copies." His voice was fading. "Made copies. Sent them to my lawyer. Insurance. In case what? In case someone ever got close." His eyes glazed. "Like your husband did, Mrs. Thornton." Clara stepped forward. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. Where did you send the copies?" Pemberton smiled one last time. "Brennan." He whispered the name like a curse. Marcus Brennan. Helena. Then his eyes went empty. Ruth stood slowly. Behind her, the children were crying. Clara was shaking. Jessie was bleeding. But Pemberton was dead. And somewhere in Helena there was proof. Proof of everything. Proof that could save hundreds of children. Proof that could bring justice to everyone the judge had destroyed. Ruth looked at Clara, at Jessie, at the 6 children who'd survived against impossible odds. "It ain't over," she said. "Not yet." Jessie nodded. His good hand found her shoulder. "No." His voice was rough but steady. "It ain't over." But for the first time in a long time, he looked at the children, at Clara, at the dead man on the floor. For the first time, we got a chance. Ruth felt something loosen in her chest, something she'd been carrying for years. Not hope, not yet, but something close. The blood wouldn't come off Ruth's hands. She scrubbed them in the basin Clara had set out, watching the water turn pink, then red, then something darker. Pemberton's blood. A dead man's blood. She should feel something about that. Horror, maybe, or guilt. She felt nothing. "You're going to scrub your skin off." Ruth looked up. Jessie stood in the doorway, his arm bound in a makeshift sling, his face pale beneath the bruises. He'd lost a lot of blood. Too much, Clara said. But he was standing. That had to count for something. "I can still see it," Ruth said. "Under my fingernails, in the lines of my palms." "It fades." Jessie's voice was quiet. "Eventually." "Does it?" "No." He crossed the room slowly, lowered himself into a chair with a grunt of pain. "But you learn to live with it." Ruth dried her hands on a rough cloth. The water in the basin was the color of rust now. She pushed it away. "The children?" "Sleeping. Clara's got them in the back room. Even the twins finally stopped crying." "And Solomon?" "Fever broke an hour ago. He's going to make it." Ruth closed her eyes. Something tight in her chest loosened. Just a fraction. "Good. That's good." Jessie was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Softer. "You did well today. Kept your head. Kept them safe. I hid in a cellar while you killed 4 men. You protected those children. That's what mattered." Ruth looked at him. At the blood on his shirt, the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his hand trembled slightly when he moved. "You almost died." "Almost ain't dead." "That ain't funny." Wasn't trying to be funny. Jessie met her gaze. "I made a choice. Same choice I'd make again." "Why?" The question hung between them. Ruth had asked it before, back in the church, when he'd first found them. She hadn't really believed his answer then. But now, after everything, she needed to understand. Jessie was silent for a long moment. "I told you about my family," he said finally. "About Sarah, about my wife, Mary Ellen, about my boy, Samuel." Ruth nodded. "What I didn't tell you is how they died." Jessie's voice went rough. "There was a fire, middle of the night. I was 300 miles away, chasing a man I thought had robbed a bank in Cheyenne." He stopped, swallowed hard. "By the time I got word, by the time I got home, there was nothing left. Just ashes. Just 3 graves the neighbors had dug because nobody else would do it." Ruth felt her throat tighten. "I spent 4 years telling myself it was Holt's fault. That he'd set the fire to punish me for hunting him. That if I could just find him, just make him pay, it would mean something." Jessie shook his head. "But it was never about Holt. It was about me. About not being there when they needed me. You couldn't have known, Couldn't I? Jessie's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. Mary Ellen begged me not to take that job. Said she had a bad feeling. Said the children needed their father home. He laughed, bitter and broken. I told her I'd be back in 2 weeks. Told her the money was too good to pass up. Told her she was worrying over nothing. Jessie, I was a coward, Ruth. Dressed it up in duty and responsibility, but underneath, I was running. Running from the hard work of being a husband and father. Running from the parts of life that scared me. That ain't true. It is, Jessie's voice cracked, and I've been running ever since. 4 years of chasing ghosts, telling myself it was justice when really, it was just another way to hide. So why stop now? Ruth asked. Why us? Jessie looked at her, really looked. Because when I heard you scream in that church, something broke. He pressed his hand to his chest. Right here. Something that had been frozen for 4 years just cracked. Ruth didn't speak. I looked at those children and I saw Sarah, saw Samuel, saw every kid I'd failed to protect because I was too busy running. Jessie's jaw tightened, and I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is why I'm still alive. Not for revenge, not for justice, but for them. You don't even know us. I know enough. Jessie leaned forward. I know you've been carrying those children on your back for 2 years. I know you've starved so they could eat. I know you'd die for any one of them without thinking twice. So would anyone. No. Jessie shook his head. They wouldn't. I've seen what people do when things get hard. They look away. They walk past. They tell themselves it ain't their problem. His eyes held hers. You didn't do that. You could have run on your own. Ruth felt something burning behind her eyes. She blinked hard. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Jessie's voice softened. You just made the right one. The tears came then. Ruth couldn't stop them. They spilled down her cheeks, hot and sudden, and she hated herself for crying, hated the weakness of it. But she couldn't make them stop. Jessie didn't move, didn't try to comfort her, just sat there, solid and steady, while she fell apart. I'm so tired, Ruth whispered. I'm so tired of being strong. I know. I don't know how to stop. You don't have to. Jessie's voice was quiet. But you don't have to do it alone anymore, either. Ruth wiped her face with the back of her hand. Her eyes were raw, her chest ached. But for the first time in years, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter. Clara found them an hour later. She stood in the doorway, a cup of coffee in each hand, her face drawn with exhaustion. She'd been up all night tending to Solomon, cleaning up the blood, dealing with the bodies Jessie had dragged out to the barn. We need to talk, she said. Ruth straightened. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Clara handed them each a cup, then pulled up a chair. But we've got decisions to make. Helena, Jessie said. Helena, Clara agreed. Marcus Brennan. The copies of Pemberton's ledger. How far? Ruth asked. 4 days' ride, maybe 5 in this weather. Clara's jaw tightened. And that's assuming the passes are clear. They won't be, Jessie said. Not this time of year. Then we go around, through the valley. That adds 2 days. And it takes us through Dawson's territory. Ruth frowned. Who's Dawson? Pemberton's partner. Clara's voice went flat. Runs the mining operations in the Southern District. Half the children Pemberton sold ended up in Dawson's mines. Ruth felt her blood go cold. So we'd be walking straight into enemy territory. We'd be walking straight into a hornet's nest. Clara set down her cup. But it's the only route that's passable in winter. Can we wait? Ruth asked. Wait for spring, when the passes open? Clara and Jessie exchanged a look. "What?" Ruth demanded. "What ain't you telling me?" "Pemberton's dead." Jessie's voice was grim. "By now, someone's noticed he hasn't come back. His men, his allies, the people who depended on his protection." "So?" "So they're going to come looking. And when they find what's left of him in Clara's barn—" Jessie shook his head. "They'll burn this place to the ground. With us inside, if they can manage it." Ruth's stomach dropped. "How long?" "A day, maybe 2. Clara stood, walked to the window. "Word travels fast in this territory. Someone will talk. Someone always talks." "Then we leave, now." "We can't. Jessie's arm is broken. Solomon can barely walk. The twins—" Clara's voice caught. "The twins are 4 years old, Ruth. They can't survive a 5-day journey through the mountains in winter." "So what do we do?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. "We split up," she said finally. Ruth went cold. "No, listen to me." Clara turned from the window. "Jessie takes the older children. You, Nettie, Toby. You're strong enough to make the journey, fast enough to outrun anyone who comes after you. And the others? I take Solomon and the twins. Go the other direction, to my sister's place in Millbrook." Ruth was shaking her head before Clara finished. "No, absolutely not. We stay together." "Ruth?" "I said no." Ruth's voice cracked. "I've lost too many people. I won't lose any more. This isn't about what you want." Clara's voice sharpened. "This is about keeping them alive. All of them. And splitting up does that? It gives us a chance." Clara crossed the room, knelt in front of Ruth. "Look at me." Ruth looked. "I know what I'm asking," Clara said quietly. "I know how hard it is. But those children are counting on us to make the smart choice, not the easy one." "The smart choice." Ruth laughed, bitter and broken. "The smart choice would have been leaving them in that orphanage. The smart choice would have been running by myself. But you didn't." "No, I didn't, and I ain't going to start now." Clara stared at her. Something shifted in her face. Frustration. Admiration. Something else Ruth couldn't name. "You're the most stubborn girl I've ever met." "I've been told." It wasn't a compliment. "I know." They stared at each other. 2 stubborn women, neither willing to give ground. Jessie cleared his throat. "There might be another way." Both women turned. "What way?" Clara demanded. "The railroad." Jessie's voice was thoughtful. "There's a station in Cedar Crossing, 20 miles east." "I know the station," Clara said. "But the railroad doesn't go to Helena." "No, but it goes to Fort Benton. And from Fort Benton, there's a stagecoach that runs north. Through Dawson's territory. Around it, through federal land." Jessie leaned forward. "Protected route. Armed guards. No one touches passengers on that coach." Ruth felt something flutter in her chest. Hope. Dangerous, fragile hope. "How do you know this?" "I've ridden it before, twice." Jessie met her eyes. "It's how I got into the territory in the first place." Clara was frowning. "The railroad costs money, a lot of it, and we've got nothing." Jessie reached into his coat, pulled out a leather pouch, set it on the table. "Pemberton's men were carrying this. Payment for a job, I'd guess." He opened the pouch. Gold coins spilled across the wood. More than enough to buy passage for all of us. Ruth stared at the gold. "You took it off their bodies?" "They weren't using it anymore." "That's stealing. That's justice." Jessie's voice hardened. "Every cent of that gold was earned by selling children, by destroying families, by murdering anyone who got in the way. He swept the coins back into the pouch. Seems fitting it pays for our escape. Ruth looked at Clara. The woman's face was unreadable. 20 miles, Clara said slowly. Can we make it in a day? If we leave now, if we don't stop. The children? We carry the ones who can't walk. Jesse stood, wincing at the pain in his arm. We move fast, we stay quiet, and we pray nobody's watching the roads yet. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Get them ready. We leave in an hour. The children didn't understand. Ruth tried to explain while she helped them dress in every piece of warm clothing Clara could find. Tried to make them see that they were running towards something, not just away. But all they heard was leaving. I don't want to go, Pearl's small face crumpled. I want to stay here. It's warm here. I know, baby. Ruth knelt in front of her. But we can't stay. Bad men are coming. More bad men? Yes. Will the nice man stop them? Pearl's eyes were wide. Like he stopped the other ones? Ruth looked at Jesse across the room. He was helping Toby into an oversized coat, his movements gentle despite his broken arm. He's going to try, Ruth said, but we have to help him. We have to be brave. I don't want to be brave. Pearl started crying. I want Mama. Ruth felt her heart crack. I know. She pulled Pearl close. I know you do. She held the little girl while she sobbed. Felt Opal press against her side, joining the tears. And for a moment, Ruth let herself imagine what it would be like to be 4 years old again. To believe that someone else could fix everything. To trust that the world was safe. She couldn't remember ever feeling that way. Ruth, she looked up. Clara stood over her, face tight with urgency. We have to go. Now. What's wrong? Clara moved to the window, nodded toward the ridge. Ruth looked. Her blood turned to ice. Riders, a dozen of them at least, coming fast. How? Ruth's voice cracked. How did they find us so fast? Doesn't matter. Jesse was already gathering the children. Back door, now. They ran, out through the kitchen, across the yard, into the barn where the horses waited, already saddled, already loaded with supplies. Jesse lifted Solomon onto the first horse. Clara took the twins. Ruth grabbed Nettie's hand. Can you ride? She demanded. A little. Nettie's face was pale. Ruth, I'm scared. Me too. Ruth swung up onto the horse, pulled Nettie up behind her. But we're going to be okay. Hold on tight. Toby mounted the last horse without a word. His green eyes were calm, watchful. He'd seen worse than this. They all had. Go! Jesse kicked his horse forward. Don't stop for anything. They burst out of the barn just as the first riders crested the ridge. Someone shouted. A gunshot cracked through the cold air. Ruth bent low over her horse's neck, felt Nettie's arms tighten around her waist. Don't look back, she told herself. Don't look back. She looked back. The riders were gaining. A dozen men, maybe more, spreading out across the snow like wolves hunting prey. And at their head, a man Ruth didn't recognize. Tall, thin, dressed in black like a preacher at a funeral. Dawson! Clara shouted over the wind. That's Dawson! Ruth felt fear spike through her chest. The mining boss. Pemberton's partner. The man who'd bought hundreds of children and worked them to death in his tunnels. And he was coming for them. Faster! Jesse's voice was ragged. We have to go faster! The horses were already at a gallop, already pushed to their limits. Ruth could feel her mount straining beneath her, hooves pounding against the frozen ground. It wasn't enough. The riders were still gaining. Another gunshot. Closer this time. Ruth heard it whistle past her ear. Nettie screamed. "Hold on!" Ruth's voice was steady. "Hold on! I've got you!" But she didn't know if she didn't know if any of them were going to make it. The tree line appeared ahead, dense forest, too thick for horses to navigate at speed. If they could reach it, if they could lose themselves in the shadows. Jesse saw it too. "The trees!" he shouted. "Make for the trees!" They veered right. Clara's horse stumbled, nearly went down, but she kept it upright through sheer force of will. Another gunshot. This one caught Jesse's horse in the flank. The animal screamed, buckled, went down hard. Jesse flew from the saddle. No! Ruth hauled on her reins, tried to turn back. "Jesse! Keep going!" His voice rose from the snow. "Don't stop. Don't ever stop. I'm not leaving you." "You are." Jesse was on his feet now, his gun in his good hand, placing himself between the riders and the children. "This is what I'm for, Ruth. This is why I'm still alive." "Jesse, tell them I tried." His voice cracked. "Tell them I finally stopped running." He turned, raised his gun, and started walking toward the riders. Ruth couldn't breathe. She watched Jesse advance, watched him fire once, twice, 3 times, watched 2 riders fall from their horses, watched Dawson raise his own weapon. "Come on," Clara's voice was sharp. "Ruth, come on. We can't waste what he's giving us." Ruth tore her eyes away. She kicked her horse forward, into the trees, into the shadows, into whatever came next. Behind her, the gunfire continued, then stopped. Ruth didn't look back. They rode until the horses couldn't run anymore. Then they walked, through forests, across frozen streams, up hills that seemed to go on forever. Nobody spoke. Nettie cried silently against Ruth's back. The twins had stopped crying hours ago, too exhausted for tears. Solomon drifted in and out of consciousness, his small body limp in Clara's arms. Toby walked beside Ruth's horse, his face blank, his eyes seeing nothing. He's dead, Ruth thought. Jesse's dead because of us. She waited to feel something. Grief, guilt, rage. Nothing came. She was empty, hollowed out, a shell going through the motions of survival. "We should rest." Clara's voice was hoarse. "The children can't go much further." Ruth looked at the sky. Gray, heavy, more snow coming. "A little further," she said. "There's got to be shelter somewhere." They found it an hour later, an abandoned cabin, half collapsed, but with enough roof to keep out the weather. Ruth helped Clara get the children inside, while Nettie gathered what dry wood she could find. Soon there was a fire, small, smoky, but warm. Ruth sat with her back against the wall, watching the flames dance. "He's not dead." She looked up. Toby stood before her. It was the first time she'd heard him speak in months. "What?" "The man. Jesse." Toby's green eyes were intense. "He's not dead." "You don't know that." "I do." Toby held up his notebook. "I drew it." Ruth took the notebook, opened it to the page Toby indicated. Her breath caught. The drawing showed Jesse, alive, wounded but alive, lying in a wagon, surrounded by people Ruth didn't recognize. "When did you draw this?" "This morning, before we left." Toby's voice was matter-of-fact. "I draw things that are going to happen. Always have." Ruth stared at him. She'd thought Toby's drawings were just memories, records of things he'd seen. But this... "You're telling me you see the future?" "Sometimes," Toby shrugged. "Not always clear, but sometimes." "And you didn't think to mention this before?" "You didn't ask." Ruth wanted to scream, wanted to shake him, wanted to demand why he hadn't warned them about Pemberton, about Dawson, about any of it. But looking at his face, at the calm certainty in his eyes, she understood. He was 10 years old. He'd been carrying this gift, this burden, alone, and nobody had ever asked. "What else have you seen?" Toby was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to another page. Ruth looked. A city, buildings she didn't recognize, and standing in front of them, a group of people. Ruth, Clara, the children, and Jessie. Alive. Whole. "Helena," Toby said quietly. "We make it to Helena. All of us." Ruth felt tears burning her eyes. "How do you know that's Helena?" "Because of him." Toby pointed to another figure in the drawing. A man in a suit, holding a stack of papers. The name on the door behind him was clear, even in rough charcoal strokes. Marcus Brennan, attorney at law. Ruth looked at Toby, at this silent, strange, miraculous boy who'd been walking beside her for 2 years without ever revealing what he could do. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she whispered. Toby's face flickered. Just for a moment, pain broke through. "Last person I told called me a demon, tried to burn it out of me." He touched the scar on his wrist, the one Ruth had always assumed came from the orphanage. "I learned to keep quiet." Ruth's heart broke. "You're not a demon," she said fiercely. "You hear me? You're a gift. You're a miracle." Toby almost smiled. "The others wouldn't understand." "They will." Ruth took his hand. "I'll make them understand." And for the first time in months, Toby's fingers squeezed back. Clara didn't believe it. "That's impossible," she said when Ruth showed her the drawings. "Nobody can see the future." "I didn't say I believed it either." Ruth kept her voice calm. "But look at the details. Helena, Brennan's office, all of us together. It could be wishful thinking, a child's fantasy, or it could be real." Clara stared at the notebook. Her face was unreadable. "Even if it is," she said slowly, "even if Jesse's alive, we can't go back for him." "I know. We have to keep moving. Get the children to safety. That's what matters." "I know." Ruth closed the notebook. "But when this is over, when we've done what we came to do..." Clara met her eyes. "We find him," Clara said quietly. "Whatever it takes, we find him." Ruth nodded. It wasn't much, a promise built on hope and a child's drawings, but it was something to hold on to. And right now, that was enough. They reached Cedar Crossing 2 days later. The town was small, a handful of buildings clustered around the railroad station, a general store, a saloon, a church with a crooked steeple. Ruth looked at it and saw danger. "They'll be watching," she said. "Dawson's people. They'll have sent word ahead." "Probably." Clara adjusted Solomon in her arms. "But we don't have a choice. The next station is 50 miles. So we walk in there and hope nobody recognizes us? We walk in there and buy tickets like normal travelers." Clara's voice was firm. "Nobody knows what we look like. Nobody knows who we are." Ruth wasn't sure that was true, but she was out of options and out of time. "Stay close," she told the children. "Don't talk to anyone. If someone asks, we're family heading to Fort Benton for my aunt's funeral." "What's an aunt?" Pearl asked. "Your mama's sister." Ruth took her hand. "Now remember, stay quiet, stay close." They walked into town. Nobody looked at them twice. Just another poor family moving through, beaten down by winter and hard times. Ruth kept her head down, her shoulders hunched, her face forgettable. The station was warm. Ruth felt the children relax as the heat washed over them. Even she had to fight the urge to stop, to rest, to let her guard down. "Can I help you?" The man behind the counter was old, gray-bearded, suspicious. "Tickets to Fort Benton," Clara said. "For all of us." "That's 8 tickets." The man's eyes moved over the children. "Expensive." Clara set the gold on the counter. The man's eyes widened. "We're in a hurry," Clara said. "When's the next train?" The man stared at the gold, then at Clara, then at the children. Ruth's hand found her knife. 2 hours, the man said finally. "Platform 3. He took the gold, counted out tickets, slid them across the counter. "Safe travels," he said, and his eyes said something else entirely. Ruth grabbed the tickets. "Thank you," she said, and walked away before he could ask any more questions. They found a corner of the waiting room and huddled together. Ruth watched the door, watched the windows, watched everyone who walked past. "He's going to tell someone," she muttered. "Maybe." Clara's voice was calm. "Maybe not. Nothing we can do about it now. We could run. Run where? We're out of money. Out of options." Clara pulled the twins onto her lap. "The train is our only chance." Ruth knew she was right. That didn't make the waiting any easier. The 2 hours stretched like years. Every time the door opened, Ruth tensed. Every time someone looked their way, her hand found her knife. By the time the train whistle sounded, her nerves were raw. "That's us," Clara said. "Let's go." They boarded quickly, found seats in the back. Ruth positioned herself by the window where she could watch the platform. The conductor came through, checked their tickets, moved on. The train began to move. Ruth watched Cedar Crossing slide past. The station, the stores, the church with a crooked steeple. And standing on the platform, watching them go, a man in a black coat. Dawson. Ruth's blood went cold. He'd found them. He knew where they were going, and there was nothing she could do about it.
"Clara," she whispered, "I see him."
Clara's voice was steady. "But he can't stop us now. Not on a federal train. He'll be waiting at the other end. Then we'll deal with it at the other end." Ruth looked at her. At this woman who'd lost everything and kept fighting. Who'd taken in 6 strangers and called them family. Who faced impossible odds with the same calm determination she used to bake bread. "How do you do it?" Ruth asked. "Do what?" "Stay so calm, when everything's falling apart." Clara was quiet for a moment. "I'm not calm," she said finally. "I'm terrified. Every moment of every day, I'm terrified." "You don't show it." "Because those children are watching." Clara's eyes found the twins, asleep against Nettie's shoulder. "They're watching me to see how to feel. If I panic, they panic. If I fall apart, they fall apart." "So you just pretend?" "I survive." Clara's voice roughened. "I do whatever it takes to get them through one more day. And then I do it again. And again. Until maybe, someday, we're safe enough for me to fall apart." Ruth understood. She'd been doing the same thing for 2 years. "What happens then?" she asked. "When we're safe?" "I don't know." Clara almost smiled. "I've never been safe before." The train rattled north. Outside, the world turned white, and somewhere behind them, Dawson watched and waited. But for now, for this moment, they were moving. They were together. They were alive. And that would have to be enough. The train rocked through the night. Ruth couldn't sleep. She sat with her back against the window, watching the darkness slip past, listening to the rhythm of iron wheels on frozen tracks. Around her, the children slept. Nettie with the twins curled against her. Toby in the corner, his notebook clutched to his chest. Solomon with his head in Clara's lap, his breathing finally steady. They looked peaceful, almost normal, like any family heading somewhere safe. Ruth knew better. "You should rest." She turned. Clara was watching her, eyes bright in the dim lamplight. "Can't," Ruth said. "You've been awake for 2 days. I'll sleep when we're safe." Clara almost smiled. "You sound like me. Maybe that ain't a compliment. Maybe it is." They sat in silence for a moment. The train swayed. Someone coughed in the car ahead. "He saw us," Ruth said finally. "Dawson. He knows where we're going. He knows we're on this train. He doesn't know where we're getting off. You think that matters?" Ruth's voice hardened. "He's got money. He's got men. He'll have someone waiting at every station between here and Fort Benton." "Probably. So what do we do?" Clara was quiet for a moment. Her hand moved absently through Solomon's hair. "We get off early," she said. "Before Fort Benton." "Where?" "There's a town called Miller's Gap. Small place. Stagecoach runs through twice a week." Clara met Ruth's eyes. "It's not on the main route. Dawson might not think to watch it." "Might not isn't good enough. It's all we've got." Ruth wanted to argue, wanted to scream that might not wasn't a plan, it was a prayer. But she was too tired for fighting, too tired for anything except putting one foot in front of the other. "When do we get there?" "Dawn, maybe a little after. Then I'll wake the children. Let them sleep a little longer." Clara's voice softened. "God knows when they'll get another chance." Ruth nodded. She turned back to the window, watching the darkness. Somewhere out there, Jesse was alive. Toby's drawing said so. But alive didn't mean safe. Didn't mean they'd ever see him again. She touched the knife at her belt. Cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. "Hang on," she thought. "Wherever you are, just hang on." The train rattled on. Miller's Gap was barely a town. Ruth counted the buildings as they walked from the station. General store, livery stable, saloon, a church that looked like it might collapse if someone sneezed too hard. No sheriff's office, no telegraph, nothing that connected this place to the outside world. Good, Ruth thought. That's good. The stagecoach office was a shack behind the livery. An old man sat outside, whittling something that might have been a horse. "Help you?" He didn't look up. "We need passage to Helena," Clara said. "All of us." "Helena?" The old man spat tobacco juice into the snow. "That's 200 miles through hard country." "Can you get us there?" "Maybe." He squinted at the children. "That's a lot of young ones for a trip like that." "They're tougher than they look." "They'd have to be." The old man finally looked up. His eyes were sharp, despite his age. "Stage leaves tomorrow morning. $20 a head." Clara's face didn't change. She counted out the coins. Gold clinked against wood. The old man stared at it. "That's a lot of money," he said slowly, "for folks who looked like they ain't got 2 pennies to rub together." "We had a good year." "Did you now?" The old man's eyes moved over them. Over Ruth's knife. Over Clara's watchful stance. Over the children huddled together like they expected the world to hurt them. "I don't want trouble," he said finally. "Neither do we." "Then we understand each other." He swept the coins into his pocket. "Stage leaves at dawn. Don't be late." They found a room above the saloon. It wasn't much. 1 bed, a fireplace, a window that rattled in the wind. But it was warm, and it was hidden. And right now, that was enough. The children collapsed in a pile on the bed. Even Ruth felt the exhaustion pulling at her, dragging her down like weights tied to her bones.
Sleep, Clara said. I'll keep watch. You need rest too. I'll rest when we're in Helena.
Clara moved to the window.
Right now, someone needs to stay awake.
Ruth wanted to argue, but her eyes were already closing, her body giving up the fight.
Wake me if anything happens. I will.
Ruth let go. She dreamed of fire. Not the church, not Pemberton. Something older. Something she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten it existed. She was 7 years old again, standing in the doorway of her mother's room. The lamp was overturned. Flames were climbing the curtains.
Mama?
Her voice was small, scared.
Mama, wake up.
But her mother didn't move, didn't breathe. The bottle in her hand was empty, and her lips were blue, and Ruth knew without understanding that she was gone. The fire spread. Ruth should have run, should have called for help, but she couldn't move, couldn't look away from her mother's face, peaceful in death, finally free of whatever pain had driven her to the bottle night after night. Run. The voice came from somewhere deep, somewhere survival lived. Run, Ruth. Run, now. She ran, through the flames, through the smoke, through the door and into the street, where people were already gathering, pointing, shouting. Someone caught her, asked if there was anyone else inside. Ruth shook her head. The lie came easy. The lie that said she'd tried to wake her mother. The lie that said the fire was already too big when she saw it. The lie that let people feel sorry for her instead of asking the questions that would destroy her. She never told anyone the truth. That she'd stood there for minutes while the flames grew. That part of her had known her mother was dead before the fire even started. That part of her had been relieved. Ruth. She woke with a gasp. Clara was shaking her shoulder. The room was gray with early light.
Time to go, Clara said. Stage is loading.
Ruth sat up. Her heart was pounding. Her face was wet.
Bad dreams?
Clara asked. Ruth wiped her eyes.
Old ones. Those are the worst kind.
Clara handed her a cup of water.
Drink this. We've got a long road ahead.
Ruth drank. The water was cold, bracing. It pushed the dream back into the darkness where it belonged.
The children? Already downstairs. Nettie's got them fed and ready.
Ruth stood. Her legs were shaky, but they held.
Let's go.
The stagecoach was ancient. Ruth looked at it and wondered if it would make it 10 miles, let alone 200. The wheels were patched. The leather was cracked. The horses looked like they'd been old when the territory was young. "She'll hold," the driver said, reading her expression. "Made this run 100 times.
That's supposed to make me feel better?"
"Supposed to make you get in." He jerked his thumb toward the door. "We ain't got all day." Ruth helped the children inside. Pearl whimpered at the cramped space. Opal clung to her sister. Solomon pressed against Nettie's side. Toby climbed in last, his notebook tucked under his arm. His eyes met Ruth's for a moment. He nodded once. Almost a smile. Ruth felt something loosen in her chest. The drawing showed them making it, all of them, together. She had to believe that. She climbed inside. They'd been traveling for 3 hours when the shooting started. Ruth heard it first. A sharp crack that could have been a branch breaking, except branches didn't come in threes.
"Get down."
She shoved the children to the floor.
"Stay down. Don't move."
Clara was already at the window, peering through the cracked leather curtain.
"Riders," she said. 4 of them. Coming fast." "Dawson's men?" "Can't tell, but they ain't friendly."
The driver's voice came from above, tight with fear.
Hold on back there. We're going to run. The coach lurched forward. Ruth braced herself against the wall, one hand on her knife, the other pressed against Solomon's back. Another gunshot. Closer this time. Someone shouted, "They're gaining!" Clara's voice was flat. "The horses are too tired." Ruth's mind raced. 4 riders, 2 women, 6 children. No weapons except her knife and whatever Clara might be hiding. Bad odds. Terrible odds. The coach shuddered, tilted. Ruth heard one of the horses scream. "We're going over," Clara shouted. "Hold on to something." The world turned sideways.
Ruth grabbed Pearl and Opal, pulled them against her chest, curled her body around them as the coach slammed onto its side. Wood splintered, glass shattered. Someone was screaming. Maybe her, maybe the children, maybe everyone. Then silence. Ruth opened her eyes. Dust. Blood. The taste of iron on her tongue.
"Sound off."
Her voice came out as a croak.
"Is everyone okay?" "Mama."
Pearl's voice, small and terrified.
"Mama, I'm scared." "I'm here, baby. I'm right here."
Ruth did a quick count. Pearl. Opal. Both breathing. Nettie, bleeding from a cut on her forehead but conscious. Solomon, pale and shaking but alive. Toby, already climbing toward the door above them.
"Clara?" "Here."
Clara's voice was strained.
"My leg's pinned. I can't move."
Ruth scrambled over the wreckage, found Clara trapped under a collapsed seat, her face white with pain.
"Hold still."
Ruth grabbed the wood.
"I'm going to lift it."
Footsteps outside, men's voices, getting closer.
"There's no time," Clara said. "Take the children and run. I'm not leaving you. Ruth, listen to me." Clara grabbed her arm. "Those papers in Helena are the only thing that matters, the only thing that can save every child Pemberton and Dawson ever hurt. I don't care about papers. You have to care." Clara's grip tightened. "You have to finish this. For all of them. For Jesse. For me. Clara, go." Clara's voice cracked. "Please, Ruth. Go. Now." The coach door above them opened. A face appeared, silhouetted against the gray sky. "Well, well." The voice was familiar, cold, pleased. "What do we have here?" Dawson. Ruth's hand found her knife. "I wouldn't," Dawson said pleasantly. He raised a pistol, aimed it at Pearl's head. "I really wouldn't." Ruth froze. "That's better." Dawson smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Now, why don't you all come out where I can see you?" They climbed out one by one. Ruth first, her knife taken, her hands forced behind her back. Then the children, crying, shaking, herded together like animals. Then Clara, dragged from the wreckage, her leg bent at a wrong angle, her face gray with pain. Dawson walked a slow circle around them. His black coat was spotless. His boots were polished. He looked like he was attending a society function, not hunting children through the wilderness. "I have to admit," he said, "I'm impressed. You've led me quite a chase." Ruth said nothing. Pemberton was a fool. Dawson stopped in front of her. Careless, sloppy. I told him those children would be trouble, but did he listen? He's dead now. Ruth's voice was flat. "Does it matter?" "It matters because his death has created problems." Dawson's smile faded. Questions, investigations, federal marshals asking uncomfortable things. Good. No. Dawson leaned close. Not good. Not good at all. Because those questions lead to me. And I've spent 20 years building something in this territory. Something profitable. Something important. You sell children. I provide labor. There's a difference. There ain't. Dawson struck her across the face. Ruth tasted blood. I don't have time for moral debates. Dawson straightened his coat. Pemberton kept records. Copies of those records are in Helena, with a lawyer named Brennan. You're going to tell me exactly what Brennan has and where he keeps it. I don't know. Another blow, harder this time. Ruth's vision went white. I think you do. Dawson's voice was patient. I think you know quite a lot, Miss Ruth. And I think you're going to tell me everything. Ruth spat blood onto his polished boots. Go to hell. Dawson looked at his ruined boots, then at Ruth, then at the children. Bring me the small one, he said. The boy who's been sick. No! Ruth lunged forward. Two of Dawson's men grabbed her, held her back. No, don't touch him! Don't you dare! One of the men dragged Solomon forward. The boy was crying, his thin body shaking with fear. Dawson knelt in front of him. Hello, little one. His voice was gentle. What's your name? Solomon didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on Ruth. His name is Solomon, Dawson said. 6 years old. Recently recovered from a fever, if I'm not mistaken. Leave him alone. He looks fragile. Dawson stood. The kind of boy who might not survive another hard journey. The kind of boy who might catch cold and simply fade away. He met Ruth's eyes. Tell me what I want to know, and the children live. All of them. I'll even let you go. You can disappear into the territory. Start over somewhere no one knows your name. And Clara? Mrs. Thornton stays with me. Dawson's smile returned. She has information I need. But the children? The children can be spared. Ruth looked at Clara. The woman's face was gray, her breathing shallow, but her eyes were clear. Don't, Clara mouthed. Don't tell him anything. Ruth looked at the children, at Pearl and Opal clinging to each other, at Nettie trying so hard to be brave, at Toby silent and watchful, at Solomon small and scared and depending on her to save him. She'd promised to protect them. She'd promised they'd make it to Helena. She'd promised Jesse she'd finish this. But promises didn't matter if they were all dead. The papers are in Brennan's office, she said, hidden behind a false panel in his desk. Dawson's eyes gleamed. See? That wasn't so hard. He nodded to his men. Bring them. All of them. We're going to Helena. You said you'd let them go. I lied. Dawson mounted his horse. Did you really think I'd leave witnesses? Ruth felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd made a terrible mistake. And now they were all going to pay for it. They traveled for hours. Ruth's hands were bound. Her face ached where Dawson had struck her. But she kept walking, kept moving, kept her eyes on the children. Nettie carried the twins. Toby walked alone, his face blank, but his eyes never stopping. Solomon stumbled along at the end of the line, barely able to stay on his feet. Clara was thrown over a horse, unconscious. Ruth didn't know if she was alive or dead. Didn't know if she'd ever know. Where are you taking us? Ruth demanded. Dawson didn't answer. He rode at the front of the column, his back straight, his attention on the road ahead. One of the guards answered instead. A young man, barely 20, with nervous eyes. His mine, the guard said quietly. 3 days south. The mine where you worked children to death? The guard looked away. Ruth stored that information. A weak link. Maybe the only one. She kept walking. Night fell. They made camp in a rocky hollow, sheltered from the wind but exposed to the cold. The children huddled together for warmth. Ruth sat beside them, her bound hands useless, her heart burning with rage. Dawson approached. "Comfortable?" he asked. Ruth didn't dignify that with a response. "I want you to know," Dawson said, "that this isn't personal. You're simply in the way of something larger, something important. You sell children to die in mines. I build the future." Dawson's voice was patient, almost kind. "The railroad, the telegraph, the industries that will transform this territory into something great. All of it requires sacrifice. They're children. They're expendable." Dawson crouched before her. "Do you know how many children die every year in this country? From disease, from poverty, from simple bad luck? Hundreds of thousands. My mines take a few dozen. That don't make it right. Right has nothing to do with it. Right is a luxury for people who don't have to make hard choices." Ruth stared at him, at his expensive coat and his polished boots, and his eyes that saw children as numbers on a ledger. "You're going to die," she said quietly. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." Ruth's voice was steady. "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, someone's going to stop you. And when they do, I hope I'm there to watch." Dawson laughed. A genuine laugh, almost warm. "I like you," he said. "In another life, you might have worked for me." He stood. "Get some sleep. We have a long journey ahead." He walked away. Ruth watched him go. Then she turned to Toby. The boy was watching her. His green eyes were bright in the firelight. Ruth leaned close. "Your notebook," she breathed. "Where is it?" Toby tilted his head, almost imperceptibly, toward the young guard, the nervous one who'd spoken to her earlier. Ruth understood. The guard had taken it, and Toby wanted her to get it back. She nodded once. Then she lay down beside the children and pretended to sleep. The guard's name was Daniel. Ruth learned this in the small hours of the night, when the camp was quiet, and Daniel was supposed to be watching, but instead was staring at the fire with empty eyes. She crawled toward him slowly, carefully, every movement a risk. He didn't notice her until she was beside him. "What?" He jerked, reaching for his gun. "I just want to talk." Ruth kept her voice soft. "Please, I just want to talk." Daniel hesitated. His hand stayed on his gun, but he didn't draw. "You should be sleeping." "Can't sleep." Ruth sat beside him. Too cold, too scared. Daniel said nothing. "How old are you?" Ruth asked. 19. "You don't look like one of his men." "I ain't." Daniel's voice was bitter. "I'm just a kid who needed work. Dawson pays good money. I didn't ask what the work was. And now you know." "Now I know." Daniel stared at the fire. "Wish I didn't." Ruth was quiet for a moment. "The boy," she said. "The one who doesn't talk. You took something from him." "The notebook?" Daniel's hand moved to his coat. "Dawson wanted it. Said to burn it." "Did you?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "No," he said finally. "I looked at the pictures." He pulled out the tattered notebook. "Kid's good. Real good. He's special." Ruth's voice softened. "They all are. They didn't ask for any of this." "I know." "Then help us." Daniel went still. "I can't." "You can." Ruth leaned closer. "You're not like them. I can see it. You're scared and you're tired. And you know what Dawson does is wrong. If I help you, he'll kill me. If you don't help us, he'll kill them." Ruth nodded toward the sleeping children. 6 kids who never hurt anyone, who just wanted to be safe. Daniel's hand tightened on the notebook. "What do you want me to do?" Ruth told him. The escape happened at dawn. Daniel moved first. He walked to where the horses were tied, pretending to check the gear. His hand found the knife Ruth had described, hidden in one of the saddlebags. Ruth watched, waited. Daniel cut the ropes binding the horses, slapped the nearest one on the flank. The horses bolted. Chaos erupted. Men shouting, scrambling, chasing after their scattered mounts. Dawson's voice rising above the noise, demanding order. "Now!" Ruth grabbed the children. Nettie took the twins. Toby had Solomon. They ran. Behind them, gunshots. Daniel's voice shouting something Ruth couldn't hear. Then a cry, cut short. "Don't look back." Ruth's voice was fierce. "Don't stop. Don't look back." They ran into the gray morning, into the snow, into whatever came next. Ruth didn't know how long they ran. Minutes, hours. Time lost meaning in the white expanse, every direction looking the same, every step a struggle against exhaustion and cold. Finally, when Solomon collapsed and wouldn't get up, she stopped. "We need shelter." Nettie pointed. Through the snow, barely visible, a shape, dark against the white. A barn. They stumbled toward it. The door was frozen shut, but Ruth threw her weight against it until the ice cracked. Inside was cold, but dry. Hay bales stacked in the corner, old tools hanging on the walls. Ruth pulled the children into the hay, covered them with everything she could find. "Stay here," she said. "Stay quiet. Don't move until I come back." "Where are you going?" Nettie's voice was small. "To find help." "Ruth, don't!" Solomon grabbed her hand. "Don't leave us!" Ruth looked at him, at his pale face and his frightened eyes, and his small fingers clutching hers like she was the only solid thing in the world. "I'll come back," she said. "I promise." She kissed his forehead. Then she walked back into the storm. The farmhouse appeared like a miracle. Smoke rising from the chimney, light in the windows, signs of life in a dead, white world. Ruth stumbled toward it. Her legs were numb. Her hands had stopped hurting, which meant they were past hurting. She reached the door, raised her fist, knocked. Footsteps inside. The door opened. Ruth looked up, and her heart stopped. Jesse stood in the doorway. His arm was in a sling. His face was bruised. But he was alive. He was standing. He was there. "Ruth," his voice cracked. "Ruth, how did you—" She fell into his arms. "The children," she gasped. "The barn. Half a mile east. They're hiding. Dawson's men are coming." Jesse didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. He grabbed his coat. "Show me," he said. They ran. They found the barn just as the first riders appeared on the ridge. Jesse grabbed Ruth's arm, pulled her behind a snowdrift. "How many?" His voice was low. Ruth counted. 6, maybe 7. "Dawson?" "I don't know. I don't see him." Jesse's jaw tightened. He checked his revolver. 5 shots left. "Get the children," he said. "Take them back to the farmhouse. There's a woman there, Mercy. She'll help." "What about you?" "I'll hold them here." Ruth stared at him. "You'll die." "Maybe." Jesse met her eyes. "But those children won't." "Jesse." "Go, Ruth." He pushed her toward the barn. "Go, now." Ruth ran. She hit the barn door at full speed, barely slowing to push it open. The children were huddled in the hay where she'd left them, their faces white with fear. "We have to move." Ruth grabbed Solomon. "Now, right now." "What's happening?" Nettie was already on her feet, pulling the twins up. "Ruth, what's happening?" "Jesse's here. He's alive. But there are men coming, and we need to run. The children didn't ask questions. They'd learned not to. They moved like shadows, quick and quiet, following Ruth out the back of the barn and into the snow. Behind them, gunfire erupted. Ruth didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. 1 foot in front of the other, that was all that mattered. 1 foot, then another, then another. The farmhouse appeared through the white. Ruth pushed the children toward it. "Inside, all of you, don't stop." The door opened before they reached it. A woman stood there, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, already reaching for the children. "You're Ruth," the woman said. "Jessie told me. Get them in, quickly." The children poured inside. Ruth turned back. "Jessie!" The gunfire had stopped. Ruth's heart seized. She ran. She found him behind the snowdrift, slumped against the frozen earth. Blood on his coat. Blood on the snow. Blood everywhere. "No." Ruth dropped beside him. "No, no, no." "I'm all right." Jessie's voice was weak, but steady. "Bullet went through. Missed anything important. You're bleeding. I've bled before. This ain't funny. Wasn't trying to be." Jessie's hand found hers. "The riders?" Ruth looked up. "Bodies in the snow. 4 of them. The others had fled." "Gone," she said. "You got 4. Should have got all 6. Jessie tried to sit up, gasped, fell back. "Damn. Don't move." Ruth pressed her hands to his wound. "Just stay still." "The children?" "Safe, inside with Mercy." "Good." Jessie's eyes were going unfocused. "That's good. Stay with me." Ruth's voice cracked. "Jessie, you stay with me." "Trying." His hand tightened on hers. "Trying real hard." Ruth looked toward the farmhouse. Too far to carry him. Too dangerous to leave him. "Help!" She screamed it into the white nothing. "Somebody help!" For a long moment, nothing. Then, footsteps. Mercy appeared, rifle in hand, her face grim. "He hit?" "Bad." Mercy didn't hesitate. She grabbed Jessie under one arm, nodded for Ruth to take the other. "On 3, she said. 1, 2. They lifted. Jessie screamed. The sound cut through Ruth like a blade. "Keep moving," Mercy said. "Don't stop." They dragged him through the snow, through the yard, through the door. Inside was warm. The children were huddled by the fire, their faces pale with terror. They watched as Ruth and Mercy laid Jessie on the kitchen table. "Nettie," Ruth snapped. "Hot water! Now!" The girl moved. "You," Mercy pointed at Toby. "Bring me the medicine chest from the bedroom. Brown leather." Toby ran. Ruth pressed her hands to Jessie's wound, feeling the blood pulse between her fingers. "Too much blood. Way too much. He's dying." "Not if I can help it." Mercy was rolling up her sleeves. "I've sewn up worse than this." "You're a doctor?" "I was a field nurse." Mercy pulled a needle from the medicine chest Toby had brought. "Civil War. Antietam. Gettysburg. Saw more blood in one day than most people see in a lifetime." She threaded the needle. "Hold him down." Ruth leaned across Jessie's chest. His eyes were open, glazed with pain. "This is going to hurt," Mercy said. "A lot." She started sewing. Jessie screamed. Ruth held on. The surgery took an hour. When it was done, Jessie lay pale and still, his breathing shallow but steady. The wound was closed. The bleeding had stopped. "Will he live?" Ruth's voice was hoarse. "If infection doesn't set in."
Mercy wiped her hands on a bloody cloth. Next few days will tell. Ruth looked at Jesse's face. In sleep, he looked younger, softer, almost peaceful. He saved us, she said quietly. He didn't even know us, and he saved us. That's the kind of man he is. Mercy's voice softened. Showed up here 3 days ago, half dead, asking about a group of children and a woman heading for Helena. Wouldn't rest, wouldn't eat, just kept asking. How did he survive? We saw him go down, saw the riders overwhelm him. Mercy was quiet for a moment. He said he heard a voice, she said finally. In the darkness, a woman's voice, telling him to get up, telling him his family needed him. Ruth felt something cold slide down her spine. What woman? Mercy shrugged. He said her name was Mary Ellen, Jesse's dead wife. Ruth looked at him again, at this man who'd lost everything and kept fighting, who'd been guided by ghosts to find them. She didn't believe in miracles, but she was starting to. The children slept. Ruth sat beside Jesse's bed, watching him breathe. Every rise of his chest felt like a victory. Every exhale felt like a prayer answered. You should rest. She turned. Mercy stood in the doorway, a cup of coffee in her hand. Can't, Ruth said. You've been awake for 3 days. I'll sleep when we're safe. Mercy almost smiled. He said the same thing about you. What? When he got here, half dead, the first thing he asked was whether you were safe. Mercy handed her the coffee. Didn't care about himself. Didn't care about his wounds. Just wanted to know if the children were all right. Ruth wrapped her hands around the warm cup. He's a good man. He is. Mercy settled into a chair. Reminds me of my husband. Where's your husband now? Dead. Mercy's voice was matter-of-fact. 20 years now. Fever took him. I'm sorry. Don't be. We had 15 good years. 15 years of loving each other and building something together. Mercy's eyes went distant. That's more than most people get. Ruth thought about her mother, about the empty bottles and the hollow eyes, and the slow surrender to something Ruth couldn't understand. I never had that, she said quietly. Never knew what a good marriage looked like. You will, Mercy's voice softened, when you find the right person. Ruth looked at Jesse. Something flickered in Mercy's face. You care about him. I barely know him. Sometimes barely is enough. Mercy stood. Get some sleep, child. He'll need you strong when he wakes up. She left. Ruth sat alone in the darkness, watching Jesse breathe, wondering what it would be like to have 15 good years with someone. Wondering if she'd ever find out. Jesse woke at dawn. Ruth saw his eyes flutter, saw consciousness return in stages. Confusion first, then pain, then recognition. Ruth. I'm here. She leaned forward, took his hand. I'm right here. The children? Safe. Everyone's safe. Dawson? Gone, for now. Ruth's voice hardened. But he'll be back. He's got too much to lose. Jesse tried to sit up. His face went white. Don't. Ruth pushed him gently back. You lost a lot of blood. Mercy says you need to rest. We don't have time to rest. We don't have a choice. Ruth met his eyes. Jesse, you nearly died. Twice. You can't keep pushing yourself like this. I can't stop either. Jesse's hand tightened on hers. Dawson knows where we're going. He knows about Brennan, about the papers. If we don't get there first, we will. How?
I can barely stand. The children are exhausted. Clara is... His voice caught. Clara. What happened to Clara? Ruth looked away. Ruth. Dawson has her. Ruth forced the words out. She was hurt. Her leg. They took her when they took us. Jesse closed his eyes. Is she alive? I don't know. Ruth's voice cracked. I don't know, Jesse. I'm sorry. Silence stretched between them. Ruth could feel Jesse's grief, heavy and cold. Then he opened his eyes. We finish this, he said. We get to Helena. We get those papers. And then we find Clara. Jesse, she saved those children. She risked everything for them. For us. Jesse's voice hardened. I'm not leaving her with that monster. We don't even know where his mine is. We'll find out. Jesse tried to rise again. He collapsed back, gasping. You're going to kill yourself. Maybe. Jesse's eyes found hers. But I'm not going to abandon her. Ruth stared at him. At this stubborn, wounded, impossible man who kept throwing himself into danger for people he barely knew. Fine, she said finally. But you're not doing it alone. Wouldn't expect you to let me. Good. Ruth stood. Because you're stuck with us now. All of us. For the first time since he'd woken, Jesse almost smiled. Wouldn't have it any other way. They left 2 days later. Jesse could walk, barely. Mercy had given them supplies, horses, everything she could spare. She stood in the doorway watching them load up, her face unreadable. You sure about this? She asked Ruth. No. Ruth tightened a saddle strap. But sure don't matter anymore. Just doing. Mercy nodded slowly. Helena's 3 days' ride. Stay on the main road until you hit Miller's Pass, then cut north through the valley. Dawson's territory is to the south. We know. Do you? Mercy's voice sharpened. Because that man's not going to stop. He's got too much invested. Too much to lose. We know that too. Mercy studied her for a long moment. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a folded paper. Take this. What is it? A letter. Mercy pressed it into Ruth's hands. To an old friend in Helena, Judge Wilson. He's honest. More importantly, he hates men like Dawson. How do you know him? Mercy almost smiled. I was his field nurse, saved his life at Gettysburg. He's owed me a favor for 20 years. Ruth looked at the letter, looked at Mercy. Why are you helping us? Because those children deserve better. Mercy's voice softened. And because I know what it's like to be alone, to have nobody willing to stand up. My husband and I, we couldn't have children. Always wanted them. Prayed for them. Mercy's eyes went bright. God never answered those prayers, but maybe he's answering now. Ruth felt her throat tighten. Thank you. Don't thank me. Mercy stepped back. Just get those children somewhere safe. We will. Ruth mounted her horse. Jesse was already in the saddle, pale but determined. The children were distributed among the other horses, bundled against the cold. Ready? Ruth asked. Jesse nodded. They rode out. They made good time the first day. The weather held, the roads were clear, nobody followed. Jesse pushed them hard, harder than Ruth thought wise, but she understood. Every hour they delayed was an hour Dawson had to prepare, an hour Clara suffered in his hands. By nightfall, they'd covered 20 miles. They camped in a rocky hollow, sheltered from the wind. Ruth built a small fire while Nettie fed the children. Jesse sat apart, staring into the darkness. Ruth went to him. You should eat something. Not hungry. You need your strength. Jesse didn't answer. Ruth sat beside him. We're going to find her, she said quietly. What if we don't? Then we tried. Ruth's voice was firm. That's all any of us can do. Try. It's not enough. It's what we have. Jesse was quiet for a long moment. I wasn't there, he said finally, when Mary Ellen died. When the children died. I was 300 miles away, chasing ghosts. I know. I swore I'd never let that happen again. Swore I'd be there for the people who needed me. You are here. Not for Clara. Jesse's voice broke. She's out there somewhere, hurt, scared, and I'm sitting by a fire eating beans. Ruth didn't know what to say. Didn't have words that could make this better. So she just sat with him. Sometimes that was enough. The second day brought trouble. They were halfway through Miller's Pass when Toby pulled on Ruth's sleeve. "Riders," he said. The first word he'd spoken in days. Ruth squinted against the sun. Saw them on the ridge above. 4 men, watching. "Dawson's?" "Don't know. Keep moving." Jesse's voice was tight. "Don't look at them. Don't stop." They kept moving. The riders shadowed them for an hour. Always there, always watching, never approaching. Then they disappeared. Ruth felt her shoulders loosen, just slightly. "Too easy," Jesse muttered. "That was too easy." Maybe they weren't his men. Maybe. But neither of them believed it. That night, Ruth couldn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to the wind, counting the children's breaths. Pearl and Opal tangled together. Nettie with her arm around Solomon. Toby in his corner, ever watchful. They'd come so far, survived so much. And they were so close. So close to Helena. So close to justice. So close to something Ruth had stopped believing in years ago. Hope. She hated the feeling. Hated how fragile it was, how easily it could shatter. She'd learned long ago that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. But here, now, watching these children sleep, she felt it anyway. They're going to make it, she told herself. We're all going to make it. She had to believe that. Helena appeared on the third day. Ruth saw it first. A smudge on the horizon that grew into buildings, into streets, into life. There it is. Jesse rode up beside her. "We made it," Ruth breathed. "Not yet." Jesse's eyes were scanning the approach. "Not until we find Brennan. Not until those papers are in the right hands." "Where's his office?" "Downtown, Main Street. Mercy's letter should get us in the door." "And then?" "Then we pray he's as honest as she says." They rode into the city. Helena was bigger than Ruth expected. Buildings of brick and stone, paved streets, people everywhere, going about their business, like the world wasn't falling apart. Nobody looked at them twice. Just another ragged group of travelers, beaten down by the road. Ruth had never been so grateful to be invisible. Brennan's office was easy to find. A brass plaque on the door. Marcus Brennan, attorney at law. Ruth looked at Jesse. "You ready?" "No." Jesse took a breath. "But let's do it anyway." They went inside. The office was small but well appointed. A young clerk sat at a desk, scratching away at papers. He looked up when they entered. "Can I help you?" "We need to see Mr. Brennan," Ruth said. "It's urgent." "Mr. Brennan is very busy." The clerk's eyes moved over their ragged clothes, their hollow faces, and his expression cooled. "Perhaps you could make an appointment?" "We don't have time for appointments." "I'm sorry, but give him this." Jesse set Mercy's letter on the desk. "Tell him it's about Judge Pemberton." The clerk hesitated. "Tell him it's about 6 children," Ruth added, "and a ledger that could destroy Dawson Mining." The clerk's face went pale. "Wait here." He disappeared through a door. Ruth looked at Jesse. "Think he'll see us?" Only one way to find out. They waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then the door opened. A man stepped out. Middle-aged, gray at the temples, wearing an expensive suit and an expression Ruth couldn't read. "I'm Marcus Brennan." His voice was cool, professional. "I understand you have something for me." "We have a story," Jesse said, "and evidence to back it up." "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that proves Judge Pemberton was selling children to Dawson's mines." Jesse's voice hardened. "The kind that shows every name, every date, every dollar exchanged." Brennan's expression didn't change. "That's a serious accusation. We've got serious proof." Ruth stepped forward. "Pemberton's dead. Dawson's trying to bury it all. But you've got copies. Pemberton told us himself." Something flickered in Brennan's eyes. "Come with me." He led them into his private office, closed the door. "Sit." They sat. Brennan walked to a cabinet, pulled out a thick folder. "2 years ago, Judge Pemberton came to me with a proposition." He set the folder on the desk. He needed a lawyer he could trust, someone to hold certain documents. Insurance, he called it. Insurance against what? Against exactly what happened. Against someone finding out. Against the whole thing falling apart. Brennan opened the folder. He was paranoid. Thorough. He documented everything. Ruth looked at the papers. Names, dates, numbers. Just like the ledger she'd described to Dawson. "You knew," she said. "All this time you knew what he was doing." Brennan's jaw tightened. "I suspected. But suspicion isn't proof. And without proof, you did nothing." "I stayed alive." Brennan met her eyes. "Do you know how many people have tried to expose Pemberton? How many ended up dead? So you just let him keep selling children." "I waited for an opportunity." Brennan's voice hardened. "For someone brave enough, or stupid enough, to bring me the missing pieces. And now you have them." "Now I have them." Brennan closed the folder. "This, combined with what I already have, is enough to destroy Dawson. Enough to put him away for the rest of his life." "What about Clara?" Jesse leaned forward. "Clara Thornton. Dawson has her." "I know. She's innocent. She's hurt. If we don't get her out—" "Mr. Carter." Brennan raised a hand. "I've been building this case for 2 years, waiting, watching, preparing. And I have resources you don't know about." "What kind of resources?" Brennan almost smiled. "Federal marshals." Brennan walked to the window, a dozen of them, waiting for my signal. "Your signal?" "I told you, Pemberton was paranoid. He documented everything, including where Dawson's mine is, where he keeps his records, and where he takes his prisoners." "You know where Clara is." "I know where she was 3 days ago. Whether she's still there—" Brennan's voice softened. "That I cannot guarantee." Jesse stood. "Take us there." "Mr. Carter, you can barely stand. You've got 6 children who need protection. This is not a job for—" "Take us there," Jesse repeated. "Or tell me where it is, and I'll go alone." Brennan studied him for a long moment. "She must be very important to you." "She's family," Jesse's voice cracked. "And I've lost enough family already." The room went quiet. Then Brennan nodded. "The marshals move at dawn." He walked to the door. "If you insist on coming, be at the Federal Building by first light. We'll be there, Mr. Carter." Brennan paused, his hand on the doorknob. "What you've done, what you've all done, it matters. Those children are alive because of you.
The truth is coming out because of you. It don't feel like enough. It never does. Brennan's voice softened. That's how you know you're one of the good ones. He opened the door. Now go get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. Ruth found a boarding house that would take them. The children were asleep within minutes, exhausted beyond measure. Jesse sat by the window, staring out at the city lights. Ruth sat beside him. "We did it," she said quietly. "We got here." "Half of it. The important half." Jesse shook his head. "None of it means anything if Clara dies." "She won't." "You don't know that." Ruth reached out, took his hand. "I know you," she said. "I know what you've done, what you've survived. If anyone can save her, it's you." Jesse looked at her. "How are you so sure?" "Because I've seen you do the impossible." Ruth's voice caught. "Because you saved us. All of us. When nobody else would." Jesse was quiet for a long moment. Then his hand tightened on hers. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For believing, even when I couldn't." Ruth felt something warm spread through her chest. She'd spent her whole life believing in nothing but survival. But sitting here, in this moment, she started to believe in something else. In him. In them. In tomorrow. Dawn came cold and gray. Ruth stood outside the Federal Building, watching the marshals assemble. 12 men in long coats, rifles slung over their shoulders, faces hard as the frozen ground beneath their boots. Jesse was beside her, pale but standing. He'd slept 2 hours, maybe less. Ruth had heard him pacing most of the night. "You don't have to come," she said. "Yes, I do. The children need you. The children need Clara." Jesse's jaw tightened. "And Clara needs me." Ruth didn't argue. She understood. Brennan approached, his expensive coat replaced by something more practical. "We ride in 20 minutes, he said. "Dawson's mine is half a day south. We hit it at dusk. What's the plan?" Brennan's eyes moved to the marshals. "We come in fast, secure the main compound, free the prisoners." "And Dawson?" "If he's there, we take him alive." Brennan's voice hardened. "I want him to stand trial. I want the whole territory to see what he did." "And if he resists?" "Then we do what we have to do." Ruth looked at Jesse. His hand rested on his gun, his eyes distant. "I'm coming too," she said. Both men turned. "Absolutely not!" Brennan's voice was sharp. "This is no place for a—" "For a what?" Ruth cut him off. "A woman? A child? I've killed men to protect those kids. I've walked through hell to get here." "Ruth." Jesse's voice was soft. "Don't." Ruth faced him. "Don't tell me to stay behind. Don't tell me to wait. I've earned the right to see this through." Jesse studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "She rides with us." "Mr. Carter?" Brennan started. "She rides with us," Jesse repeated. "Or I don't go at all." Brennan looked between them. Whatever he saw made him sigh. "Fine. But you stay behind the marshals. Both of you." Ruth almost smiled. "Wouldn't dream of anything else." The children didn't want her to go. Pearl clung to her legs, crying. Opal hid behind Nettie. Solomon's small face crumpled with fear. "Don't leave," Pearl sobbed. "Please don't leave." Ruth knelt, gathered the twins in her arms. "I have to, baby. Someone needs our help." "But what if you don't come back?" "I'll come back." "You promise?" Ruth hesitated. She'd promised so many things. Some she'd kept. Some she hadn't. "I promise," she said. Toby stepped forward. His green eyes were calm. "She'll come back," he said quietly. "I drew it."
He held up his notebook. Ruth saw the picture. Herself, standing in front of a house, the children around her, and beside her, Jessie. And beside Jessie, Clara. See? Toby almost smiled. We all make it. Ruth felt something loosen in her chest. She pulled Toby into the embrace with the others. You keep them safe, she told Nettie over their heads. No matter what happens. I will. Nettie's voice was steady. I learned from the best. Ruth stood, looked at each of them one last time. Then she walked out the door. They rode hard. The marshal set a brutal pace, eating up miles like the ground itself was burning behind them. Ruth's horse struggled to keep up, but she pushed it harder. Jesse rode beside her, his face white with pain, but his eyes fixed on the horizon. How are you holding up? Ruth called over the wind. I'll live. That ain't what I asked. Jesse almost smiled. I'll tell you when this is over. They stopped once, briefly, to water the horses. Brennan spread a map on the ground. The mine's here, he pointed. Main entrance to the south. Prisoner quarters to the east. Dawson's office is in the big house on the hill. How many men? Hard to say. 50, maybe more. Most of them hired guns. Brennan's jaw tightened. They won't surrender easy. What about the children? Ruth asked. The ones in the mine. Brennan was quiet for a moment. We don't know how many are still alive, he said finally. The conditions down there. Ruth felt her stomach turn. We get them out. All of them. That's the plan. It ain't a plan, Ruth's voice hardened. It's a promise. Brennan met her eyes. Yes, he said. It is. The mine appeared as the sun began to set. Ruth saw the smoke first, black and thick, rising from a cluster of buildings in a valley below. Then the structures themselves, rough wooden shacks, a large house on the ridge, and the mine entrance, a dark wound in the earth surrounded by machinery and men. Hold here, Brennan raised his hand. The column stopped. We wait for full dark, he said. Then we move. Ruth dismounted. Her legs were shaking, but she forced them to hold. Jesse came to stand beside her. You ready? No. Me neither. He checked his gun. But we do it anyway. Ruth thought about the children back in Helena, about Toby's drawing, about all the promises she'd made. Yeah, she said. We do it anyway. They moved at midnight. The marshals split into 3 groups. One for the main compound, one for the prisoner quarters, one for Dawson's house. Ruth and Jesse went with the 3rd group. They crept through the darkness, staying low, moving silent. Ruth's heart pounded so loud she was sure someone would hear it. The house loomed above them. Lights in the windows, shadows moving inside. 2 guards at the door. Brennan signaled. 2 marshals moved forward, quick, quiet, efficient. The guards went down without a sound. Go, Brennan whispered. They rushed the door. Inside was chaos. Ruth heard gunfire from somewhere in the house, shouts, screams, the sound of glass breaking. She followed Jesse down a hallway, her knife in her hand, her blood roaring in her ears. A man appeared in front of them. Jesse fired. The man dropped. They kept moving. Where is she? Don't know. Jesse kicked open a door. Keep looking. They searched room after room. Empty, empty, empty. Then Ruth heard it. A voice. Weak but familiar. Clara! This way! She ran down the hall, through a doorway, down a flight of stairs, and there, in a small room lit by a single lamp, she found her. Clara was chained to the wall. Her face was bruised, Her leg was splinted badly, the wound beneath it dark with infection. She was thin, pale, barely conscious, but alive. "Clara!" Ruth dropped beside her. "Clara, can you hear me?" Clara's eyes fluttered open. "Ruth?" Her voice was a whisper. "Is that—" "It's me." Ruth's hands were shaking as she worked at the chains. "It's me. I'm here." "The children—" "Safe. Everyone's safe." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I knew you'd come," she breathed. "I knew. Don't talk." Ruth finally got the chains free. "Save your strength." Footsteps behind her. Jesse appeared in the doorway. His face went white when he saw Clara. "Oh God, help me!" Ruth grabbed Clara's arm. "We have to get her out." They lifted her together. Clara screamed. "I'm sorry." Jesse's voice broke. "I'm sorry, Clara. We have to move." They half carried, half dragged her up the stairs. The house was full of marshals now. Men running, shouting, securing rooms. The gunfire had stopped. Brennan appeared. "Did you find—" His eyes found Clara. "Jesus! She needs a doctor." "There's one coming from town." Brennan's face was grim. "Get her outside. The air's cleaner." They carried her to the yard. Ruth laid Clara gently on the ground, pillowing her head on a folded coat. Jesse knelt beside her, holding her hand. "Clara." Jesse's voice was rough. "Clara, stay with me. I'm here." Clara's eyes opened. "I'm still here. I'm sorry." Jesse's voice broke. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I'm sorry you were hurt. I'm sorry—" "Shh." Clara's hand found his face. "You came. That's what matters." Ruth watched them. The tenderness between them. The connection that went deeper than words. She stepped back, giving them space. "Where's Dawson?" She turned. Brennan stood behind her, his face tight. "Don't know. Haven't seen him. He's not in the house. None of my men can find him." Brennan's jaw clenched. He might have escaped. Ruth felt something cold slide through her. After everything, after all they'd sacrificed, if Dawson got away— There! Toby's voice. Ruth spun. Toby stood at the edge of the yard, pointing toward the mine entrance. Ruth hadn't even known he was there. "How did you—" "I came with the marshals." Toby's eyes were fixed on the darkness. "He's in there. Dawson. He went into the mine." "Are you sure?" "I saw it." Ruth looked at Brennan. "We have to go after him." "Into the mine? That's insane. There could be 100 men down there. Or none. Dawson's a coward. He's running, not fighting." Brennan hesitated. "I'll go." Jesse's voice. He stood behind them, his face pale but determined. "Jesse, no." Clara's voice, weak but urgent. "You can't." "I have to." Jesse looked at her. "He's the one who killed your husband, the one who took you, the one who hurt all those children." "Then let the marshals handle it." "The marshals don't know that mine." Jesse's voice hardened. "But I've been in 100 like it. I can find him." "Then I'm coming too." Ruth's voice surprised even herself. Jesse turned. "Ruth, you're wounded. You can barely stand." She met his eyes. "You need someone watching your back." Jesse studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Stay close." They went into the darkness. The mine was a labyrinth, tunnels branching off in every direction. The air thick with dust and something else. Something that smelled like death. Ruth tried not to think about the children who'd worked these tunnels, who'd died in this darkness. She focused on Jesse's back, on putting one foot in front of the other. Footprints. Jesse crouched, pointing at the ground. Fresh. He went this way.
They followed the trail deeper. The tunnels narrowed. The ceiling dropped. Soon they were hunched over, squeezing through spaces that seemed too small for human bodies. Then the tunnel opened up, and there he was. Dawson stood at the edge of a shaft, a lantern in one hand and a pistol in the other. His expensive coat was torn. His face was streaked with dirt and blood. He looked like what he was, a cornered animal. "Mr. Carter," Dawson's voice echoed off the stone. "Miss Ruth, how persistent you've been." "It's over, Dawson." Jesse raised his gun. "You're finished." "Am I?" Dawson's smile was ghastly. "Perhaps. But then again—" He raised his lantern. Ruth saw what he meant to do. "No!" She lunged forward as Dawson hurled the lantern into the shaft. Fire bloomed in the darkness. Something deep in the mine caught. A rumble started, growing louder. The walls began to shake. "You'll kill us all!" Jesse shouted. "That's the idea." Dawson was laughing now, wild and broken. "If I can't have what I built, no one can." He raised his pistol. Ruth threw her knife. It caught Dawson in the shoulder. He screamed, the gun falling from his hand. Jesse moved. He tackled Dawson, driving him to the ground. They struggled. Dawson clawed at Jesse's wound, making him cry out. Jesse's fist connected with Dawson's face. The rumbling grew louder. "Jesse!" Ruth grabbed his arm. "We have to go, now." Jesse looked down at Dawson. The man was barely conscious, blood streaming from his nose. "Leave him!" Ruth shouted. "Number!" Jesse grabbed Dawson's collar. "He stands trial. He answers for what he did." "He'll slow us down." "I don't care." Jesse hauled Dawson up. Together, they ran. The mine was collapsing around them. Rocks fell. Dust choked the air. Ruth couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She just ran. Jesse was beside her, dragging Dawson. They stumbled through tunnels that shook like living things, barely staying ahead of the destruction. "There, light ahead. The entrance." Ruth threw herself forward. They burst into the open air just as the mine collapsed behind them. Ruth lay on the frozen ground, gasping. Her lungs burned. Her whole body shook. But she was alive. They were all alive. Marshals swarmed around them. Someone was shouting for a doctor. Someone else was putting chains on Dawson. Ruth didn't care. She looked at Jesse. He was staring at the ruined mine, his face unreadable. "It's over," she said. Jesse turned to her. "Yeah." His voice was rough. "It's over." The trial lasted 3 weeks. Ruth sat in the gallery every day, watching as witness after witness took the stand. Survivors from the mine, farmers who'd lost their children, federal investigators with documents and ledgers and proof. Dawson sat in the defendant's chair, his face empty. He didn't speak, didn't react, just stared at nothing while his empire crumbled around him. The verdict came on a Tuesday. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. People cheering, crying, embracing. Ruth felt Clara's hand find hers. "We did it," Clara whispered. "Thomas did it." Ruth squeezed her hand. "We all did it." They walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight. Jesse was waiting on the steps. He'd healed well in the past weeks. The color had returned to his face. His arm was out of the sling. He looked almost like a normal man, except for his eyes. His eyes still carried the weight of everything he'd seen. "Where are the children?" Clara asked. "With Mercy." Jesse almost smiled. "She's teaching Pearl and Opal to bake bread. Solomon's helping." "And Ruth?" Ruth shook her head.
I was here. Someone had to see it through. Clara looked at her, really looked. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm tired, Ruth said. That's what I am. Then rest, Clara's voice softened. You've earned it. Ruth thought about rest, about stopping, about letting go. She didn't know if she remembered how. They returned to Clara's farm. It had taken weeks to repair the damage. New windows, new doors, a fresh coat of whitewash on the walls. It looked like a home again. Ruth stood in the yard, watching the children play. Pearl and Opal chased each other around the well. Solomon sat on the porch, a book in his lap. Nettie was hanging laundry, humming to herself. Toby sat apart, drawing in his notebook. Always watching, always remembering. Beautiful, isn't it? Ruth turned. Jesse stood beside her, his shoulder almost touching hers. Yeah, she said. It is. They watched in silence for a moment. What happens now? Ruth asked. What do you mean? We won. Dawson's in prison. The children are safe. Ruth's voice caught. What happens now? Jesse was quiet for a long moment. I've been thinking about that, he said finally. Been thinking about it a lot. And? And I think, he turned to face her, I think I'm done running. Ruth felt her heart skip. What does that mean? It means I want to stay. Jesse's eyes found hers. Here, with Clara, with the children. He paused. With you. Ruth couldn't breathe. Jesse, I know I ain't much. Jesse's voice roughened. I'm broken and scarred, and I've got more ghosts than one man ought to carry. But I've spent 4 years looking for something worth living for. And I found it. He reached out, took her hand. I found it in a frozen church with 6 scared children and 1 fierce girl who wouldn't give up. I found it in a woman who'd lost everything and still kept fighting. I found it in a family that chose each other when nobody else would. Ruth felt tears sliding down her cheeks. That ain't much? Her voice cracked. That's everything. Then stay. Jesse's grip tightened. Be part of this. Help us build something real. Ruth looked at the children, at Clara watching from the porch, at the farm that had survived fire and blood and betrayal. She thought about her mother, about the empty bottles and the lies and the fire that had taken everything. She thought about the years she'd spent running, surviving, never trusting anyone enough to stop. And she thought about what it might be like to finally have a home. Yes, she said. Jesse's face transformed. Yes? Yes. Ruth laughed through her tears. I'll stay. I'll be part of this. He kissed her. Ruth had never been kissed before. Not really. Not like this. It was gentle and fierce and full of promise. When he pulled back, she was shaking. Took you long enough, she whispered. Jesse laughed. I'm a slow learner. Clearly. They stood there, holding each other, while the children played and Clara smiled and the sun warmed their faces. And for the first time in her life, Ruth let herself believe in tomorrow. Spring came early that year. Ruth woke to birdsong and the smell of coffee. She lay still for a moment, feeling the warmth of the blankets, the softness of the pillow, the solid presence of walls that wouldn't collapse. Home. The word still felt strange, but it was getting easier. She rose, dressed, walked to the kitchen. Clara was there, already up, her leg healed but still stiff. She moved around the stove with practiced ease, flipping pancakes and humming. "Morning," Ruth said. "Morning," Clara smiled. "Children are in the barn. Jesse's showing them how to saddle a horse." "All of them?" "Even the twins," Clara laughed, "though I think they're more interested in petting the horses than riding them." Ruth poured herself coffee. "Hard to believe it's been 6 months." "I know," Clara's voice softened. "Sometimes I wake up thinking it was all a dream. Then I hear those children laughing, and I remember."
Remember what? That it was real. All of it. The pain and the fear and the loss. Clara turned to face her.
But also the love, the hope, the family we built from nothing. Ruth felt something warm spread through her chest. We did build something, didn't we? We did. Clara crossed the room, pulled Ruth into a hug. And we're going to keep building, every day, for as long as we have. Ruth held her tight. She'd never had a mother. Not really. Not one who held her and loved her and told her everything would be okay. But she had Clara now. That was enough. That was more than enough. The wedding was small, just family, just the people who mattered. Ruth stood beside Clara, watching as Jesse said his vows. His voice was steady, his eyes never leaving Clara's face. Clara cried. Jesse cried. Even Ruth cried, though she'd never admit it. The children stood in a row, scrubbed clean and dressed in their finest. Pearl kept wiggling. Opal held her sister's hand. Solomon watched with wide eyes. Nettie smiled like she'd never stop. Toby stood apart, as always. But his notebook was closed. His eyes were present. He was finally here. With them. Part of something bigger than his visions. After the ceremony, they ate and danced and laughed until the stars came out. Ruth slipped away. She stood on the porch, looking out at the land that had become hers. The fields they'd planted. The fence they'd mended. The home they'd built with their own hands. Beautiful night. She turned. Jesse stood behind her, his coat off, his sleeves rolled up. "Yeah," Ruth said. "It is." He came to stand beside her. "You okay?" "More than okay." Ruth took a breath. "I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how far we've come." She looked at him. 6 months ago, I was starving in a frozen church with 6 dying children. Now you're home." "Yeah," Ruth's voice caught. "Now I'm home." Jesse put his arm around her. "You know," he said quietly, "I spent 4 years thinking my life was over, thinking I'd never feel anything again except guilt and rage. And now I wake up every morning grateful. For Clara, for the children, for this farm and this life, and—" He looked at her. "For you." Ruth felt her heart swell. "I ain't nothing special." "You're wrong." Jesse's voice was firm. "You're the strongest person I've ever met. You saved those children. You saved Clara. You saved me." "I didn't save anyone. I just didn't give up." "That's the same thing." Jesse turned her to face him. "That's exactly the same thing." Ruth looked into his eyes. She saw everything there. The pain, the hope, the future they were building together. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For believing in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself." Jesse smiled. "Always," he said. "Always and forever." The years passed. Ruth watched the children grow. Pearl and Opal became young women, quick-witted and fierce. Solomon grew tall and strong, the sickness of his childhood a distant memory. Nettie married a good man from town and had children of her own. Toby never stopped drawing. His pictures filled notebooks, then walls, then galleries. People came from miles away to see the boy who drew the future. Clara and Jesse grew old together. Their love deepened with each passing year, weathering storms and celebrating joys. When Jesse's hair turned gray, Clara teased him. When Clara's joints ached in winter, Jesse carried her to the fire. They were happy. Ruth found her own happiness in the farm she helped build, in the children she helped raise, in the family that had chosen her when no one else would. She never forgot where she came from, never forgot the frozen church, the empty bottles, the mother who couldn't love her enough to stay. But she learned that the past didn't have to define the future. She learned that broken things could be mended. She learned that love was a choice, made fresh every day, in every small act of kindness and courage. And when people asked her how she'd survived, how she'd kept going when everything seemed lost, she always gave the same answer. "You just don't stop," she'd say. "You put one foot in front of the other, and you keep walking. Because somewhere ahead, there's something worth walking toward." And she was right. The last day of Ruth's life came on a spring morning, 60 years after that frozen night in Cedar Falls. She was old now. Her hair was white. Her hands were lined with age. But her eyes were still sharp, still fierce, still the eyes of the girl who'd refused to let 6 children die. She sat on the porch of the farmhouse, watching the sunrise. The children were grown now, with children of their own, and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren running around the yard. They'd come from all over to be with her. Pearl and Opal, gray-haired but still inseparable. Solomon, a doctor now, who'd saved more lives than he could count. Nettie, surrounded by her own brood. Toby, famous and beloved, his drawings hanging in museums. And standing beside Ruth, holding her hand, was Clara. Clara, who'd survived everything, who'd loved everything, who'd never stopped fighting for the family they'd built. "It's beautiful," Ruth said softly. "All of it." "It is." Clara squeezed her hand. "You built something beautiful, Ruth." "We built it. Together." Clara smiled. The sun rose higher. Ruth felt the warmth on her face, felt the love surrounding her, felt the peace she'd spent her whole life searching for. She closed her eyes, and she let go. They buried her beside Jesse. He'd gone 3 years earlier, passing peacefully in his sleep, Clara holding his hand. Clara spoke at the funeral. Her voice was strong, despite her years. "Ruth saved us," she said. "All of us. Not just on that frozen night, but every day after. She taught us that family isn't blood. It's choice. It's showing up again and again, even when it's hard." She looked at the gathered crowd, at the faces of the people Ruth had loved. She taught us that broken people can heal, that lost people can find their way home, that hope is a choice made fresh every morning. Clara's voice caught. She taught us that love is stronger than fear, stronger than death, stronger than anything. She placed a hand on Ruth's grave. "Thank you," Clara whispered, "for choosing us, for fighting for us, for never, ever giving up." The wind stirred, flowers bent. Somewhere a bird sang, and the family Ruth had built stood together, remembering the girl who'd walked through fire and found something worth living for. They stood in the place she'd made for them. They carried her love forward. And they never stopped choosing each other, because Ruth had taught them that family was the one thing worth fighting for. Always.